welcome to episode 2 of the season 2 for the Dr. Roz Show podcast. I am so excited because I am here with my Fiskites tonight. This is a whole Fiskite production tonight. We have State Controller Malia Cohen, who's my
California
classmate.
State Controller.
California, thank you. California State Controller. And Malia, you guys will hear a little bit more about her a little later. We also have my other classmate, chair of the school board of Metro Nashville, Freda Player.
Hello, everyone.
And then we have my pro-fight. And let me go back. Freda was also our SGA president. And we have my pro-fight, Alderwoman Milele Cogs, who was also the SGA president at Fisk University. So hello, welcome to the show.
Good evening, and thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Tonight, we are discussing having her political seat at the table. And I'm so excited. This is the Fiskite edition. I was just telling someone earlier that anything and everything that I need, I can find it in a Fiskite. Even our special producer tonight, Yasmin Hayes, who's also Fiskite. So thank you for producing this show for us tonight. I'm very excited. The power of Fisk women, the power of Fiskites, it is beyond amazing. But let's get into this show because we do know that Controller Cohen has to leave soon because she's speaking on a panel. So we'll start with you, State Controller Malia Cohen. I'm trying to get the titles right. I'm sorry. Tell us about you and tell us what that means. What is the controller of the state of California?
Okay, so for purposes of this this podcast, you can just refer to me as Malia. We are old friends. We go back long before any of these titles were bestowed upon us. But I want to say thank you for welcoming me, and hello to all of the Dr. Roz Show listeners. Thank you for subscribing and being a part of this circle tonight. My name is Malia Cohen. I'm a native Californian, and in 2022, I was elected to be California's first African-American person to be the state controller. And I have 15 years of experience in public life. I was first elected in 2010 to a little town called San Francisco, to the County Board of Supervisors. And then from there, I've worked my way up, much like our vice president, whom I'm sure we will talk about a little bit more in this discussion. But the controller is an important role. It's a constitutional role here in the state of California. California is the 5th largest economy in the world, and the controller is responsible for the disbursements of all, which means the payment of all the bills, all the salaries. I wear a hat not only as a policymaker, but also as an investor. I sit on the CalPERS and CalSTRS board, which is the retirement board for public sector employees as well as teachers. And so these two pension boards combined invest about close to $800 billion. And so my role is largely financial. I serve as a fiduciary. I'm looking at everything, every decision, every policy decision that the legislature passes. I look at them through a fiduciary lens. I'm looking at the finance. So in essence, my job as a state controller is I'm in charge of writing the checks. So when you got your tax return and you're a member of the California and you pay your taxes in California, I sign that check. If you are a state employee, I sign your paycheck. If you are a retiree, I sign your paycheck. So there's hundreds of thousands. There's hundreds of thousands of checks that I'm signing, and I put that in quotes because I'm not physically signing them, but that we're sending out in disbursements, managing the payroll, managing the accounts, making sure all the money is where it's supposed to be. I also have a component where I handle all the fraud for the state of California, just to make sure that it's not happening. So Dr. Roz, I'm delighted to be here, and I love to see my other Fiskite sisters on this call, whom we all knew each other. We all studied together. We were all in the yard together. We all did SGA together, ironically. So maybe that's been a little bit of foreshadowing on our careers. But I turn it back to you, Roz. Thanks.
Thank you so much for being here. And I didn't know that you were a history maker, classmate. So amen. I'm happy to hear about that. Let me just tell you, this is greatness at Fisk University. I tell this to people all the time.
It is true.
Like we are just amazing. And, if we don't toot our own horn, who will?
Mm-hmm.
we will go to you next. Alderman Milele Cogs. Tell us about what all you do for, is it the 6th District?
Yes, in the
Okay,
city of
okay.
Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I have the pleasure and the honor of, well, first I want to say thank you, Roz. Thank you for the invitation, and thank you for having such an important conversation at this point in the nation's history. Um, I am Milele Cogs, Alderwoman of the City of Milwaukee's 6th District. I have both the pleasure and the honor of representing the 6th District. It's about 40,000 residents. I was elected in 2008, and the 6th District is a district in which I was born and raised and where the majority of my family still lives. So it is such an honor to represent them and so many other great people here in the City of Milwaukee. So I'm an Alderwoman. And at the time I was elected, it was 15 members, and I was the only woman for 8 years. I was the only woman, and only the 14th woman in the city of Milwaukee's 178 years of existence to ever be an alderwoman. We primarily are the legislative branch of city government. So we deal with police, fire, health, garbage, streets, that kind of thing. So I get to make, I always tell constituents, I get to make decisions about the allocation of resources and ways in which to help to improve the quality of life for residents every single day. So I am proud to be able to do that um, each and every day. Thank you.
Didn't know you were a history maker either. That is fantastic. I love this. I love this. I love this. And our final panel for tonight, my classmate, Freda Player, and I believe you are the chair of the Nashville Metro Board.
Yep. A
Okay.
week ago yesterday, I was just elected unanimously as chair of the Metropolitan School Board. I was also budget chair of the board. I think I'm one of the longest service consecutive chairs. I was chair of the budget and finance for 4 years, and our budget is $1.25 billion with that. And so, yes, and like Malia said, she was actually vice president when I was president. So yes, all the SGA connections going right there together in the top level. But yeah, I'm in charge of educating 80,000 students, over 10,000 employees. We are caretakers of 160 buildings, and making sure of the second largest school district in Tennessee, second to Memphis, of course, making sure our kids get a quality education, that we employ certificated staff, which is teachers and support staff, anywhere from cafeteria managers to bus drivers to parapros to secretaries, all that stuff, and making sure our kids do well and succeed and become more proficient each and every year in the state of Tennessee. So that's what I do in a nutshell, is make sure all of our 80,000 students are well educated and receive a quality, diverse, unique education.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And I don't know if you guys heard the running theme, but these ladies are in charge of the money and the resources. So they allocate those things. So these are amazing women that we're talking to tonight. I want to go ahead and get into, first of all, let me just say that I love seeing Freda. Milele, were you there? I'm not sure if I saw you, but I saw Freda and Malia at the Democratic National Convention. And I was so jealous. I wanted to be there with you guys. It looked like you were having a fantastic time. But I want to get into this issue with immigration.
Well, let's just dive right on in.
Why is immigration
policy issues? Let's go ahead and go to the national, to the top. What's really going on? Yes.
Like, why is that so? Why is it so difficult?
Why is it so difficult?
Manage.
Well, I'm going to take a stab at it. I'm going to take a stab at this.
Okay.
Because the state of California, I represent 40 million people, right? I'm a Californian, and it's a border state. We border Mexico to our south. And so growing up here, you always had, now let me back up. I live in San Francisco, so I'm not affected by people physically crossing over the border, right? That's more in the much more southern part of where I am. I mean, quite almost a full day's car ride, just want to orient people on how it's working for California. And so immigration has really been a challenging issue, right? And I think you see it come into vogue usually during an election season, because it is a very polarizing issue. We've got the Republicans have one vision on for immigration, and then the Democrats have another vision. I mean, and there's other varying visions that are kind of in the middle too, whether you're independent or Green Party or Peace and Freedom, all these other parties that exist but don't get a lot of oxygen. And it really has to do with, I think it has to also do with diplomacy. I mean, there is sovereign nations. In this particular example, you've got California and Mexico that do business together, that are neighbors together. Some people have dual citizenship. And so the border is a sensitive topic. I mean, think about it. If your next door neighbor, if their lemons are encroaching on your tree, I mean, their lemon trees encroaching upon your fence, who repairs the fence? I mean, there's some state laws that will help clarify and bring clarity to this particular issue. The challenge is that we don't have a lot of clarity when it comes to on the federal level. When it comes to immigration, how many people do we let in? Who do we let in? I mean, and I'm just talking about just Mexico. You think about the folks in Guatemala, El Salvador, Nicaragua. You think about, we have Irish immigrants that have come in, that when we talk about immigration in California, they always want to put in brown washing on it and have Mexicans be the ones, but Irish are here, German are here. Then you have the Asians, you have Chinese, Indian. I mean, it's so complicated because business, in the end of it, I think it all boils down to businesses are predicated on the use, and in some cases, even the exploitation of workers, whether they're documented or undocumented. And these folks are working in our homes, they're working on our gardens, they're working in tech companies on special visas. The other level of complexity on such of this issue is class. Are these educated people from other countries coming in? The United Emirates, you think about Saudi Arabia, these rich oil companies, their students are coming, studying in the United States, and then going back overseas, starting businesses, and have developed relationships with the United States, which, by the way, is the fifth largest which is the largest economy in the world. So, I mean, there is a lot at stake here, and it all boils down to money and power. So that is high level. I'm happy to answer follow-up questions. I don't want to dominate the conversation too much, because I do want to hear what the other ladies have to say when it comes to immigration.
Okay.
To piggyback on that, so part of it's a foreign policy issue. We have countries, particularly when Malia was talking about Central America, where you just have mass, gangs, mafia, violent, corrupt governments. And so a lot of people are escaping for pure physical safety. So a lot of it, whereas they're literally refugees from their own places. So part of it is, if I have to save my baby's life, I'm leaving my country because I think they're going to be threat of being shot because a family member was, because of corrupt government, corrupt gangs, and things like that. So there's also that part of how do you handle the diplomacy part. The other point, I'm in a agriculture state. So for me, we have a lot of migrant workers because they say they want to take jobs, but the problem is Americans do not want to pick cotton, literally here in Tennessee, strawberries, apples. That's one of the things that when they try to hire American workers, they literally do not make it to lunchtime. They quit by lunch because it's hard physical labor. And then you get to the exploitation of you're paying them under the table, you're paying them cash, if you pay them at all. You have a lot of wage theft that happens. And then also construction. Nashville is a booming economy. So we have a lot of undocumented workers who are coming here to work construction and send money back home. And then for me as a school board district I have undocumented students. So right now the state changed our education formula where we can't count our undocumented students as Title I students, where you get extra funding because they're learning English as a second language. So the city has to pick up that tab because the state won't, because they don't want to validate that, because to be economic disadvantage, you have to be on SNAP, or you have to be on, food stamps or WIC or something like that. And if you're undocumented, you don't have access to it because you're not a citizen. So if I have 5,000-6,000 kids who are not proficient in English yet, the city has to pay for that and take up that cost. So that's the other aspect. But also going back to if and when they become citizens, who are they going to vote for? And as you look at the demographics, a lot of them will tend to lean on the Democratic side. And so that's the other aspect of it, is you're looking at the future political power of where's the power base, particularly in the South, where the majority of people of color are starting to increase, where you're breaking up those Republican supermajorities.
Yeah.
I think
thank you for answering that.
I think my fifth sisters have covered most of it. I would just say two additional things. I think even non-political folks in some cities where they have gone through extra lengths to help house, help feed, and help take care of immigrants, you do have residents who don't get that same treatment, who question, why does an immigrant get treated better than a citizen? And I don't think that's about Democratic, Republican. It's about, just taking care of the people in your city and how people feel about that. And unfortunately, that becomes a debate about immigration. I guess I'll say a little bit about what my sisters didn't say is the politics of it and the reality of the impact of it is what they discussed. But I think what we see and what people are seeing at the debates, on commercials, hearing on the radio, is more of the theater of it, where it is being used by one party talking about the prosperity and opportunity and diplomacy of it all, and by another party being used as a dog whistle to get all of those intolerant, racist, classist, whatever people out to come vote. People who might not like the system at all and ordinarily might not cast a vote, but making sure to get them out for this next election and trying to ensure that they will vote for them. Painting immigrants as eating pets and painting immigrants as criminals and killing folks and all of those things, that's all dog whistling to get out some of the most extreme people to come and vote for their party. And to me, although it's centered around immigration, that's not really about immigration. They're just, it's theater. They're creating a narrative to try to appeal to a certain class of folks to get them to come cast votes that they need to win.
And I appreciate all of y'all's insight on it, because I didn't think about it in terms of it being a money issue, or I just didn't think about it in that sense, or a power issue. So I appreciate the insight on that. I had the opportunity a little early on in my career to consult with immigration. So what I know is that these people that were escaping, as you were mentioning, Freda, they were escaping these horrible situations. They were not criminals. They literally were just looking for a better way of life.
That's it.
Really just trying to get away from a horrible way of living. And when you think about it, the lengths that some of them would go to get away, where they know that death will be preeminent, but they just had to do something, lets you know that these people do not have a criminalistic mindset, basically. And so I really appreciate you ladies discussing the idea of it being about power and money, because for the life of me, I just couldn't understand why there was a great deal that was up and the Republicans shut it down. I was just like, I don't understand. How does Trump have that much power that he was able to tell them to shut it down? But what it relates to, as you said, it's not about immigration. It's about money and power. And so now that makes so much more sense. Not that I like what he did, because I think it's very selfish.
And when you're talking about when he shut down the borders, is that what you're talking about? Yeah. When he shut down the borders.
Yeah. Where he was like making an issue for the election, So I don't know if I understood it. And I'm sure.
I think you're speaking to the bipartisan bill that they had on immigration that was just about to be signed. And he put a kibosh on that.
Because we talked about money and power. They're really interchangeable. When you have money, you have power. And although a peace agreement was close, it wouldn't benefit him in the campaign. He needed something to bolster his candidacy. And what better way to stoke the flames than with fear? Fear and hatred. So, I mean, I'm trying to keep the conversation a little balanced and high level from a policy perspective. But if you really want to go down there into the details, full disclosure, I'm a Democrat all day, all night for the rest of my life. And that's not to say that I'm 100% in agreement with the Democratic platform, the platform of the Democratic Party, but it's heartbreaking to know that is how things shook out. And you still see it when you heard that dog whistle, like Milele was saying about the Haitians eating cats and dogs. They know that is factually incorrect. You heard it in the debate. The moderator said, actually, we've talked to Ohio officials and that's not even a fact. But yet he still played it, and it still gets played because it gets his base incensed and worked up and agitated, and most importantly, moves them to the polls. J.D. Vance admitted
and
that
that's
he
the
lied.
scary part, that it is. Like that's the scary part, though, that people are unmotivated, that there are people with that type of mindset that live right
These
next door
people
to
want
us.
to win at all costs. At all costs.
Yeah.
They don't care who they
terrifying.
hurt or who gets in the way, and in many cases, they don't even care who dies. They just want to win. They want to be back in power. They want to be back in charge and back on top. We should move on to another topic because
And speaking of that, it was the perfect segue into the next question of why is Donald Trump so dangerous for this country?
I mean, you go to the fundamental part of democracy, and I know it sounds big and, esoteric and academic, but literally how democracy works is at the line, especially with the Supreme Court saying that presidential powers and presidential acts are immune. So the question is, what's an official act? And that's something that hasn't really been tested all the way through. So as he said, like, oh, Freda, you represent an international community in Nashville. And because you have Kurdish and Somali and Latinos in there, and you are supporting their undocumented students getting English lessons, you're on a hit list. And I can knock you out of office. I can do physical violence. We don't know how far that can go, because what is deemed aiding and abetting for a policy that they don't want to do. But also what other countries are looking at. I mean, as I travel across the world, the way people react to America, even have standing, is a big issue. Of when I went to Egypt and I went to Morocco and Iraq, when they're talking about, well, you as Americans are talking about a smooth transition and about the transition of democracy, but you are not doing it yourselves. So we can't be a holder of democracy saying that we are the caretakers of democracy, monitoring international elections, having foreign policy saying that if we promote and defend democracy, if you look at China and Taiwan, they're saying, but sorry, you're not doing your own selves in your own backyard. You having violent takeovers of the Capitol, but you're saying a smooth transition and democracy is the best form of government and the most peaceful form of government, but you're not doing it self. So it takes away our moral authority to have some foreign policy, whether it's in the Middle East, whether it's in the Far East, that we do. And then also, he is not a policy involved person. So usually with the president, you're dictating, this is what my policy goes to, and then my cabinet my cabinet secretaries and my advisors implement that vision. But when he is not the visionary and your undersecretary is, you don't know what literally they are doing for policies that they're growing, because he is not one producing it. And so that's the other aspect of having democracy really be at stake. And at any point, they can say, hey, Black women, we're taking away your right to vote. The 19th Amendment, we're going to appeal it and put in laws in place. And then we have to go figure out, oh, how are we going to test the Constitution and bring it to the Supreme Court? But if you pass the Supreme Court, they can flip it at any point in time. So that's the other aspects of it. It's just your everyday things that you do in life that you take for granted can be done with a swipe of a pen that doesn't even need congressional check and balances if that happens. So that's the kind of the high level of like why he's so dangerous.
That's terrifying.
I think to really know, why he's so dangerous, one, people can look back at the 4 years that we did have him. I don't know about you guys, but there wasn't a week that went past where I didn't have a conversation with a constituent, a coworker, somebody about something crazy, silly, or just out of pocket that was done, passed, or said.
Yeah.
by the president of the United States that was, as a person living in this country, embarrassing, and sometimes just downright immoral or wrong. And so
Yeah.
there's that. And one of the things I just think about is it's crazy to me, like on a debate where he'll say they handle COVID so well. And I think back to all of the folks I lost because of COVID.
Yeah.
All of
Yeah.
the folks that were sick, ill, separated from family, all of those things. And I think of all of the days that he sat up on TV talking about it's the China disease, or it's really not that bad. As we were moving into a necessity for shutdown of a country, he was on TV acting like it was not as serious as it was, and still to this day calls it the Chinaman disease. When you have America dying, you're putting our lives at risk because of
Yeah.
your ignorance, your games, or whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah.
Those are all things that he wouldn't change. And now, because of the Supreme Court judgment, it's like free reign to get in and do whatever you want. And if anybody wants to know what it would really be like if he got in, read 2025, read Project 2025. He would be the most powerful president ever. He would take away so many of the powers that we have that are unimaginable. Read Project 2025. Even if he only does a fraction of what's in Project 2025, this will not be the America that we know.
Yeah. And I've had arguments with people like, who are not necessarily, and this is kind of leading into the next question, who are not necessarily Trump supporters, but they're one issue voters. They don't like the fact that the Democrats are really pushing reproductive rights, and they don't really understand the reality of it. And their pushback is, well, it's going to take Congress before any of that stuff in Project 2025 passes. And I was like, the mere fact
Yeah.
that it's an opportunity for that to happen is terrifying. It's terrifying. So my next question is, what do we say to these one issue voters who just don't get it?
I don't think that there's just one conversation, one magic statement or phrase that you can say to a single issue voter, because first you need to get to the person to realize that they're actually not a single issue voter. I mean, there are many issues that affect them that they are concerned about. But what they have done is probably wrap their mind around just one or two different salient talking points. But when you listen to them and you deconstruct their reasoning, and I'm a pro-choice Democrat, so you can't convince me that it is not a right for a woman to choose her own body, to choose what she wants to do for her own body. Just like you have a right to own a gun, you should have a right to be able to take autonomy and control of your body. And what's scary is that we are women on this call, and that they're not taking away rights of men. They're taking away rights of women. You have men making decisions that have to do with us. And you have some women that fold into this and their beliefs. One thing that we all have in common is that we matriculated at Fisk University for 4 years, which is right there in the heart. It's in the Bible Belt, Middle Tennessee. And oftentimes the argument to support pro-life is enshrouded into religion and religious doctrine. And I remind people that slavery was affirmed and rooted in that same religious doctrine and that same Bible. So these teachings from the Bible certainly can be interpreted, and they're open to plenty of interpretations. But I almost don't even, I see this as just as a rights issue. Now, to the single issue voter, particularly that one in your family, things happen and move very quickly. You see it, you have an example of how Donald Trump has able to systematically put conservative judges on the bench, and they were able to dismantle Roe v. Wade, a law that has been on the on the books for 50 years, and they took it away in a blink of an eye. And all of us, including myself, are dumbfounded. Like I didn't think it could be possible. So I guess if there is maybe I should become a single issue voter. And when people ask me for endorsements or people want me to support their endeavors, I say, where are you on when it comes to a woman's right to choose?
Yeah.
But single issue voters, when you deconstruct their concern, I think that there's more at stake here. Why are all these men worried about what we're doing with our body?
Yeah, that to me, it's crazy, right?
Yeah,
it really truly is. Like, I don't even understand why they care.
So I live in a red state of Tennessee. So all of you have more abortion rights than I do at this very moment.
Yeah, that's right.
So
you should come to California.
If I know, and I may go camping in California one day if I need to. But so when we had a trigger ban, so we already passed the law. So when the law passed at the United States Supreme Court, our abortion ban went into immediately. So we had a law. So 2025 is already in southern states. Like, I can tell you state by state what is state law right now where I sit that's already in effect in 2025. Abortion rights is one of them. I'm the executive director of Emerge Tennessee, where we recruit and train Democratic women to run for office. One of the women I trained, Allie Phillips, a young woman who was 25 years old. She wanted to start a family. See you, Malia.
Thank you.
Thank you, Malia. Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you. As elected officials, we're always multitasking. She's going on to do a panel. So that's often. I just came from a meeting before this. So we're always coming and going. But she got married. Her and her new husband wanted to have a baby. They tried to have a baby. She actually got pregnant. Then she realized the baby was going to have fetal anomalies and that the baby would not survive birth. And so they tried to hold on as long as they could. And then she realized, like, at this point, we have to terminate the baby or the baby's going to deteriorate and you will get sick because of the deterioration of the baby, because it would be no longer literally living in her body. And so what had happened was she had to go to New York City. She had to go on an emergency plane to New York City. She went to New York City and then she went to get her consultation for the abortion the next day. Well, when she got for the consultation, they're saying you have to have it now or you are not going to survive. And so she had to have the abortion immediately. And it was a client-only clinic. So her poor husband was sitting at the hotel next door while she was going through the procedure by herself. And he didn't know. So this is happening in real time. He doesn't know his wife is going into having this, had to terminate the pregnancy. And it was a DNC, but essentially in an abortion. And she had to do it because she's in her 20s. Like, she's trying to start a family. And so now she's ended up running for state rep right now. She's on the ballot. But that's one of the things that we deal with. So even if you want to have a family, I have friends, I know Fiskites who are literally expecting their child. And one thing we don't talk about as Black women, as women, we don't talk about miscarriages how many women have miscarriages and how often that happens. And so I'm hearing stories that in waiting rooms, doctors are waiting to see, are you going to bleed out to a certain level before I can do the abortion so I don't get my license revoked for 10 years and go to jail? So this is happening in southern states where people are afraid to get pregnant to expand their families, because if I have a non-viable baby, how do I take care of myself? And also, she has a child. Let me tell you that. She already had a toddler. So part of it is too, she's like, I need to live for my existing child. And so you're doing that then with her stepfather, because her new husband wasn't the baby's father. Taking him in as our own, like, that's not an issue, but that comes another custody issue. If her ex-husband would be like, hey, the mother's dying, so, like, can I have my child back? So that are things that it's not an easy answer, and it's not about, oh, you're a promiscuous woman, you got pregnant, and so now you're using abortion as a form of birth control. Part of it's literally people who want to expand their children and their families, but can't do it because of what happens in everyday pregnancies. in a lot of states and everywhere we go. So for people who don't think abortion rights is real, come to a southern state. We can't get abortions literally in the southern state unless the mother's life is at risk. And they still haven't defined what's at risk. That's another thing. They tried to clean up in the last session, but and there's a doctor who had to clean up. He voted for the bill, didn't realize, I didn't realize how the bad bill was because I didn't read the bill. And he's an actual physician and had to come back and clean it up. So that's what I'm saying. So these things are happening in real time. And I want to say something about that one issue voter too. So a lot of people are saying, I'm running for Trump because he gave me a stimulus check. But you know what also that tax bill did? Yes, he gave you a stimulus check, but he took away for you to write off your mortgage interest in your income taxes.
Yeah.
So it gives you cash right away. But if you have a 30-year mortgage, before you can write off that interest for the next 30 years, you can't do that anymore because of Trump. That's how he paid for the part of the stimulus. So that's the other part. They may give you a quick cash right now in your hand, but you're going to pay for it at the other end. So those tax refunds you should get with several $1,000s, people know it's Trump because Trump decided that that's how I'm going to pay for it. I'm going to take that back. But I'm going to give you a little cash at hand, but it's going to cost you more because you can't write off thousands of dollars of interest from your mortgage.
On a one issue voter, I tell constituents who may be upset because of an issue or a vote or whatever, after we debate about the issue, if we really are on totally different sides and we just have our reasons, what I say to them is, although we may disagree on this one issue, I bet you if we keep talking, it's 100 other issues that we agree on. Yeah. So what I encourage people who present as single issue voters to do is, when we put a person into the White House, they're not only doing things around one issue. It's thousands, if not millions of issues that they will come up against in their term that are going to impact our lives. Mm-hmm. So even if there is no candidate that you're going to agree with on every single issue, and even if you disagree on one issue,
can you hear her?
Oh no, she went mute. Milele, did you mute your mic? We can't hear you. Oh, I'm not sure if she can hear us.
Yeah, I think she can.
Okay. Oh, okay. We couldn't hear the last part that you said, Milele. I think your mic was muted, but
just make an informed decision. Like, study the candidates for real. Study them on multiple issues that you care about, and make an informed decision. No candidate is perfect. No one is going to be 100% exactly what you want, but there is the opportunity for somebody that's a lot more of what you want. Could you imagine voting for somebody because of one issue, but then all of the other issues that they're on are ones you don't agree with? That would be crazy. And so it's really about doing your due diligence to study the candidates and what their positions on all the issues you care about before you make that decision.
Yeah, that I do agree with. It is disheartening to hear about the reproductive rights. And I think this just happened in Georgia. I just think I saw an Instagram post where a young mother did just die because she didn't get the help. Her death could have been so preventable because she was miscarrying and didn't get the help she needed. And she lost her life in the process. And to your point, Freda, she already had a young child. So now here is a child who lost their mom to a ridiculous new ruling that makes no sense, none whatsoever. Mm-hmm. It is heartbreaking. It is beyond heartbreaking. And let me just say, I think at the DNC, the Democrats did a beautiful job painting and telling the story of reproductive rights. I mean, I think they did a beautiful job of the storytelling and to show us that it doesn't just affect the mother, but, when the husband spoke and he's like, I'm watching my wife who might possibly die, and how terrifying that was. I mean, that was heartbreaking. And then we get to the end of the storytelling that they did, and it was the young victim who took her first pregnancy test at 12. I can't even imagine. Y'all, I still had pigtails at 12. I was still playing with bark dolls at 12. I was a late bloomer. I'm just being honest. So I can't even imagine being a victim of sexual assault by your stepfather.
Yeah,
Like
I personally heard a rumor where there was a 12-year-old that got raped, got pregnant, and then people were trying to figure out how to get her to another state to get the health care because you're 12 years old. You don't, and it was something that wasn't like, as the stereotype would think, if she was out there being promiscuous, she was actually being molested and suffering from incest. And that is real. I mean, we're not regulating vasectomies. It's one of the things that's the other aspect of it. And also too, like in Georgia and Tennessee, we have the highest Black maternity rate, a fatal maternity rate that we have. So we are having women who are dying just giving birth or right after birth for various reasons. And so that adds on to that rate of doing that, where like you having particularly Black women who are having tough time carrying babies and staying alive, that now you add another layer of a barrier to even make that more difficult.
I do agree. And then I think it was in Ohio where the woman was arrested and almost like sentenced to life because she went home and had a miscarriage. And they tried to say she murdered the child. And I think she got off on the charges, but just the mere fact that I'm grieving because I've lost my baby. And now I'm about to go to jail because of a miscarriage, something that I couldn't prevent. That miscarriages happen every minute on the minute, for no apparent reason at all. And so it is that was a very unfortunate situation.
And that's one thing too. Okay,
Okay.
real quick, that you have women of childbearing age elected to office. In Tennessee, in the state house, we only have one woman who's of childbearing age in the state house of 99 representatives. All the other women are postmenopausal. And the state Senate, we have 3. Wow. So I also want to put into that, like, these people do not have a stake in the game because they literally have grandchildren. They're not worried about IVF and all that stuff. So remember, when you look at people who to vote for, literally look at their age, because they're the ones who are actually going to live it and explain it. So that's one thing to also keep in mind.
No, that's a great point, Freda, because the lived experience is very telling. And if you've had your kids, you're like, that's not my issue. You're not worried about that. But for people who are still trying to create and cultivate families, it's a very real and very present issue. Very present issue. So thank you for saying that. But yeah, that is something to think about. And so we're talking about the hard policies. Guys, why are we struggling with gun reform? I really thought after Sandy Hooks that we would be okay. I don't know what happened. I don't know why we cannot make this something that is no longer an issue. It is just very confusing to me. It is very confusing that we can't figure out this gun issue. And so the shooting that just happened in Georgia, I am so glad that they arrested that father. I am so glad that they arrested him. Reason being, because he knew his son. Like, I don't have kids, but you can't tell me that you live in a house with a child and you don't know that they are homicidal or suicidal. You cannot tell me that. And if you don't recognize that, then you are completely neglecting your child. There is no relationship there. And then for you to go out and buy this child a gun, I'm so glad they arrested him. And then I saw something where he's requesting to be put in solitude because he's not making it. He's got so many threats with all the main prisoners. So we don't have any sympathy for you, sir. None whatsoever. None. But for me, it just seems like it's so easy to pass gun reform, and I don't understand why we can't. I understand. I know it's about money. I know the NRA paid. I know they're in a lot of people's pockets or whatever. But we're not trying to take away the gun rights of people. And I've heard people say in this argument that it's not the responsible people that go out and buy the guns. It's the people who get the guns illegally. Well, that's not necessarily true. We just saw in Georgia that this person had the guns legally and gave it to the child. So I propose, and I know ain't nobody listening to me, but I propose that in order for you to get a license to have a gun, is that everybody in the house has to pass a psychological evaluation. Everybody in the house. And I don't know why that hasn't come up before, why people have such a problem with that. But if there is like someone that is dealing with some emotional difficulty, there need to not be a gun in their presence, because then they may become homicidal, like this young kid did. And Freda, I remember you had to deal with this. Was it maybe 2 years ago?
Yep, with the Covenant shooting that happened.
Yeah.
In Tennessee. Yeah, that's literally 5 miles away from my house where that happened.
Yeah.
And I live in Tennessee. We are a strong Second Amendment state. I had neighbors who were strong Second Amendments. And it's from a cultural standpoint, it's ultimately about protection. If you really talk to a Second Amendment, unless they're a true history buff and understand the Revolutionary War and a regulated militia, and to be able to defend your freedom and liberty against a tyranny of government, you have a segment of Second Amendment advocates who believe that it's part of their constitutional right, because if government ever get out of hand, that we as citizens have a right to form a militia and to beat back the government. That's a little bit kind of what you saw as a foundation for January 6th, that was kind of that belief acting in action, because they felt that the election was truly stolen. So that's like kind of a little bit one level of that, just without the obvious shooting of guns. But that's kind of like the kind of the manifestation. But what it really comes down to is fear and protection. If you talk to people, particularly in the South, as I talked to particularly some of my female friends who were big, strong Second Amendments, they were talking about, well, if I go to an ATM and someone carjacks me, trying to arrest me, I need to protect myself. So I'm going to have a gun holster underneath my steering wheel column, or I'm wearing the bra clip. Like before, when I got so I have a carry permit. I had to go through a license, take a test. And literally in the last 4 years, you can get a permit. You don't have to have a permit. It's no permits. So you don't have the permitless carry. So anybody can literally carry an open gun on their hip and literally walk anywhere. Before, you had to keep your gun in a car in your workplace. Now you can wear your gun in the hip in the car. You were allowed to have guns in bars. All this happens in Tennessee. This is actually legal, and people have fought it and lost on the state level. But it's a fear of, if society goes awry, do I protect literally my property and my family? And I need to have that protection because someone's going to harm me, and I need to do it. Now, going back to your suggestion of psychological evaluation, the reason why people don't want to do that, because they have to talk about how many people on anxiety medicine, how many people on antidepressant medicine. So they're afraid that if you go to my health records, you're going to see I'm on these medications, and then you're going to take away my safety issue in part. I mean, there's literally the studies that some people blood pressure go lower when they see a gun for protection. The other people is opposite, where their blood pressure goes up because they fear the gun. So it's even kind of like, it comes even to a different psychological. People see that as a safety blanket or a security blanket with it. So it's one of the things that even in Sandy Hook, which it was a very conservative, white, upper class part. And one of the things that you heard people in the community saying, I didn't think it would happen at this school. And I didn't happen at my school. I thought my school was safe. But when you really look at it, who can afford the AK-47s?
Yeah.
It's not our people. Like, our kids may get home a revolver, a pistol, but we're not getting rid of assault rifles. Like, that's also, who has the money to spend $500,000, $600,000, $1,500,000 on not just one weapon, but have a collection of weapons? There's a class issue there too. And they're assuming because of that class issue, this doesn't affect me because bullets happen in the inner city. Bullets happen in the hood. And I sometimes well, you feel safer in the hood because as weapon. If they're doing it, it's because there's beef with one person. It's not having beef with the whole class of system. So a lot of it's that cultural mentality of protection and government's taking away my protection. So how do I protect me and mine and protect myself? And so that's where that ultimate fear comes in, and everything else doesn't matter.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that point.
I really think it truly is about the power of the NRA lobby. The way people debate about guns, you would think that people were actually trying to take people's right to bear arms away.
Yeah.
That's not even a debate. The debate is about common sense legislation that could help make it difficult for people who shouldn't be having a gun anyway to have one, and the types of guns and weapons and stuff like that. Do we all need military style weapons to keep ourselves safe? That kind of thing. So it's insane to think that everyone knows we all have the right to bear arms and all that kind of. No one is saying that no one should have guns. It's just that there should be some regulations as to who can. There should be some regulations as to the type and style of gun that we allow. Like all of those things are really just common sense things that we should be discussing. But it becomes more about you're trying to take away my right. I don't want no regulation at all. I think because of the power of the lobby, because it's a business, right?
Yeah.
All of those guns have manufacturers who are making good money in this country. And if you say that all of the people who currently have access to them can buy them, that they can't, that any of them, because of their medical history, because of the type of gun or whatever, that they can't, that hits the bottom line for many of these companies. And that lobby is so strong that not only to lobby about legislation, but donations to campaigns, the whole bit. It's one of the most powerful lobbies in the nation.
Yeah.
And so I think they dictate the lack of progress that we've had on common sense gun legislation.
And this is Republicans talking to Republicans. The mothers of Covenant, they are all Republicans, and they couldn't get their fellow Republicans to vote after their children were massacred. I mean, there were some children that they couldn't identify their bodies immediately because the way the rifles shredded, like they literally went by what they were wearing, and realized, well, who didn't come out of the classroom, and they did process elimination. So that's like how drastic like it is that they're not even listening to their own. And after Covenant, the Tennessee Firearms Association was really pushing of don't pass legislation, even just the red flag law. So that's the other aspect of it too. And I want to say one thing too. And the gun manufacturer and the ammunition manufacturer made record profits under Obama with the whole fear of he's taking your guns away. And they made record profits during his 8 years, despite that threat. So you would hear people like in Tennessee stockpiling ammunition and guns because of that threat. So going back to Milele's point, like that is a real thing about the bottom line.
Whew. Ladies, I thank you so much. This has been such a riveting conversation and a very honest and very authentic conversation, and conversations we are not having. And this is something, and this is our final question for the night. This is something that was trending on X or Twitter or whatever it's called now. Women are afraid that their husbands will know who they are voting for. Can you ladies speak to that?
Absolutely. They will not.
I know.
Like I sat on one of the bidding committees that determined the voting machines in Nashville when I was in the mayor's office, worked in the mayor's office. There's no way they can do it. Like unless you're wearing a camera into the voting booth, and to do it, there's no way. Even with the paper, when you print out the paper ballot, your name's not on that ballot. So that's the other part. Like your husband does not know who voted for. Because if we could, trust me, with all the data and someone who's run campaigns, if I can find out specifically who voted for who, man, I'll be wealthy because I can elect anybody across the 8,000 elected seats in the country. Like people would be buying elections and all that stuff if that was true. No one knows what you can do. When you see that tally, like, no, go ahead and do it. No one knows. The election commission doesn't know. The person who gave you the ticket doesn't know. No one knows. It's still a private ballot.
Thank you.
Freda's right. Even if you're like a student of elections, you can see who voted. You can see what the results in certain wards were, like which way those numbers voted. But they're all just numbers. You don't know how any individual voted, other than what they may choose to share with you. And people should think about like your own voting experience when you go to. How would anybody know? And I know here in
Right.
Wisconsin, either you do the machine or you do the a printed ballot. And if you do a printed ballot, you put it into a machine. No one
Right.
sees it.
Right.
So in a factual, just basic way of how this is done, who would know? And you don't write your name on it. So how would anybody know? I think,
Right.
and I would just say this. I think this next election is so important for the future of this country, for our families, that people have to put a little bit of fear aside and do what is necessary and what is right to ensure that this country is being taken in the proper direction. So fears of whatever, you might just have to put those aside. And I hope some of the stuff that we've shared today helps to allay some of those fears for folks. Because we really need people to come out and we need people to vote in ways that are best for their family, their community, and moving things forward because we shouldn't be going back.
Yeah, our
Thank you.
ancestors literally voted in fear.
Yeah.
Like people watching them, making them count the gun balls, paying a poll tax. Like they had to go to some white people and say, "Can you help me pay my poll tax so they can go vote?" And so that white person knew that they actually voted and when and where. So we don't have to do that. So think about it. If our ancestors did it under worse circumstances, you can easily go early vote. You could do a mail-in ballot. You could vote on election. There's so many different ways you can vote in a safe way that different than literally a generation ago from our parents and our grandparents who did it under pure threat. So just think about that. The people that we admire, if you're fearful now, think about what they did in the 60s, 50s, 40s, and 30s.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, ladies. Is there a way that people can contact you?
They can contact me on Facebook. I'm at Freda Player or Freda for Schools. So my handle is Freda at Freda Player on Twitter and on Facebook. So you can contact me. You can Google me. Just literally Google Freda Player, and you'll see how you can contact me on the internet and my email, my school board address. You can email me at any time. Be more than happy to talk to you. Thank you, Roz, for bring us together. We had a nice little political reunion, and it warms my heart to be my SGA predecessor. And it's good to see you again. Again, it warms my heart.
People can reach out on Facebook. I'm Alderwoman Milele Cogs. On Twitter, I'm Alderwoman Cogs. They also can go to Milwaukee.gov, the city of Milwaukee's website, to reach me by email or telephone. I welcome the conversation and the reach out. And yes, Roz, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for the dialogue. Thank you for having the dialogue. And I do want to say this, Roz, I'm very proud of you. I know you probably get that from a lot of people for all the stuff that you do. But watching you as a neophyte till now and seeing you truly walk in your greatness and your purpose from afar, watching everything off of social media and all the great stuff and allowing me to play a small part in it. I am truly grateful. And Freda, it is always a pleasure to be in your company. Watching your growth has really been tremendous too, and Malia too. I often tell folks about y'all because Fist did this. It really did.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, ladies. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful night, and thank you for all the hard work that you are doing. We so appreciate you. And for those of you that are watching the replay, you can still post your questions. I'll get them to our panelists so whether they can answer them for you. If you were a little nervous to post your questions publicly, we understand. You can always email me or direct message me the questions, and I'll get them to our panelists for you. But thank you so much. I want to say a special thank you to Fiskite Yasmin Hayes for being our producer tonight. Thank you so much. She just stepped in and was like, what do you need? And I'm like, that when I tell you that's the Fiskite way. Honestly, any and everything that I need, I can find it in a Fiskite. I believe that to the core of my heart. So I'm forever grateful, forever grateful. And ladies, I have taken up enough of your time. I love you all. Thank you so much. And I love you with the grace of God. Have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful night.